With us today we have Boaz Haetzni, who never sits still or quietly, and it comes out of from his father, and it comes to his daughter, and the whole family, and they're all in movement. They all the time are dedicated to Eretz Israel. And today, Boaz deals with publicity and education in the Moetzet of Shomron. Takes all the important people in the Shomron and tells them about Eretz Israel in order to send the message of Eretz Israel. This is what he does, and here he's going to talk to us about the Palestinian bluff. I'm a lot to show this particular angle, what we call the quarrel between the Palestinian and Israelis, and I show it to classes, and through it I understand all the history of the quarrel from this particular point, what we call the Palestinian issue. All the plans are supposed to take us to two states, to two people, to two nations. The idea, the beauty of this, it sounds very just. Very just. You have two nations, and each one is going to get what they want, and we'll divide everything, and we'll have an happy ending. Everybody will just give up. It sounds like reasonable. Anybody in the mind, it sounds reasonable. And whoever is against it is somebody who wants war. In order to run away from this concept of two people and two nations, the only way is to know what it means to have those nations. Who are they? My father called them, there's the black witch and the white witch. The black and white witch. So we have one nation, the Jewish people, that what is interesting about him is the way that we kept our identity for 2,000 years all over the world, away from the center where he used to be, Eretz Israel, in a way that is very difficult to describe. Obviously, it's clear that it doesn't have any other nation that has that got himself connected to the identity, to the prayers, to everything all over the world. It was kept almost identically. When everything connected together and checked the text, there was not much difference. But they kept what they said, a live connection. And I took this idea of a live connection to its land. What does it mean? How can you do that? As Professor Oman said, like, how can you kept the moon, like, it's so far away from the center for 2,000 years? How can you come and keep it live? How can you do that? Live connection. You weren't there. Your father, grandfather. How do you do that? Through the close element, the religious. You're connected through that. You're connected to the land. And in the tefillahs, 3 times a day, you have there's a hope, there's a aspiration to come back, to come from all over the 4 corners of the world in Jerusalem. We say, you're a hero for all. Somebody sits in France, a Jew, from 4 meters of snow and prays for rain, where in a land that none of his ancestors were or heard of or been there. And he changes it according to like dew or rain, according to the seasons, and in Seder of Pesach, everybody keeps it and everybody knows about it, and it says at the end, next year in Jerusalem. Everything you see is temporary, next year in Jerusalem. And when you get married, in the middle of the most intimate and most personal in life, we suddenly get politics next year in Jerusalem. It's a political statement. You're moving. You don't forget for 1 second where is the target, where we aspire to, as a public group, as everybody. It's from the mandate. This got in through to the League of Nations, to whoever knew, a Jew knew that his land was that place over there. What's the name? We didn't know. Got all kinds of names. The location was clear. We succeeded to pass the 2,000 years, and then we got to First World War. At the end, we had the Balfour Declaration. After that, in 1917 to 1920, there was the San Remo Convention. That decided to all the nations that won the war, and they created a new institution that was called the League of Nations. That was to prevent a world war again, a catastrophe like that. And the nations united in this institution that represented all of them in order to solve any fires that will create another war. And in 1922, they gave Britain a mandate. What does it mean? A guarantee, to create a national home for the Jewish nation in Eretz Yisrael. This is a quote from one of the main part of the text. It's a very interesting text. Whereas recognition has thereby been given to the historical connection of the Jewish people with Palestine and the grounds for reconstituting their national home in that country. First, the base of this international situation is unusual, that was created in regards to the national home in this place, is a base that's theoretical. It's spiritual. It's not how do nations accept their nation by war, not other ways. But suddenly here we have a Jewish nation that gets the land out of sympathy to something that was so strong, that was so rooted in the minds of the nations, is the historical connection. The way that they had this live connection to this nation came through this. When the word that is amazing is mechadash, which means renewed, reconstituted. When was the last time? It's not from zero. When was the last time there was a national home in Israel? The Chashmonaim, in the Second Temple. In 2,000 years, they took away all the exile. They took the whole string of 2,000 years, cut it, reconnected Second World Temple time, and came to today, and created something in the international law, that the national Jewish connection. To what extent this is the international situation by law, and what Obama is trying to do is to change this. What did they call it in the original English? Palestine. Where did that come? And we come to the other nation, the Palestinian nation. Who is he? Palestine. This is our friend Adrianus, was the Caesar that broke the Bar Kokhba revolt. And this revolt cost a lot to the Romans. Also the big, 5 years before, also the big revolt. And he got really mad. Not only that I butchered 700,000 Jews. The Jews were sold in Rome for one horse ate for 1 day. So they had a lot of people, and the prices for slaves, Jewish slaves, went down. Not only that, I already gave them, it wasn't enough. This is a very stubborn element. I'm going to make sure that they won't have a place to go back by changing the identity of this nation. And why would he? Because they were the biggest, at the time, the biggest empire. China was there, but in the Western world, they were the biggest. In the Middle East, North Africa, Rome was the biggest. And when you look at the map, 20 years, there was a generation that was born to this name, and they won't know. So he changed the name. Jerusalem, Ilia Capitolina, and Provincia, Judea was the province of Palestine. And the word Palestine is not Arab, but from Adrianus Caesar. He took it from the Plishtim. Why the Plishtim? Because they knew that they won't come back. King David gave them the knockout and knew that they won't come back. So it was a solid ground that the whole nation will be on their name, and no other nation will say, we are the Plishtim. The name Plishtim is interesting. The Plishtim is a Jewish nation, came to different countries that came in from other places. They're mentioned in Avraham Avinu time. The second time was later on as a result of the explosion in Santorini. There was an explosion, and the Minoim came in Crete. They came all over because there was an explosion there. They came strong cities. They came with technology, and they're called the nations of the sea. The Plishtim, wherever they came, we had a problem until King David overcome them. The word Plishtim that we gave to him, there's people that came that are foreign, not original. He took this name, which was a name that was on the shelf, sort of, and used it. And whoever inherited this took over a name that was foreign in its essence. So we'll look, Haifa 1877, Hebron 1910, Shechem, Nablus 1910. The Roman, until the 7th century, the Romans changed the Byzantine Empire until the 7th century. Then you have the Muslim until the 12th century, until more or less the 11th. Then came the Crusaders. They were at the 13th century. Then the Muslim came back until 1917. And the Turkish, I'm looking in the Muslim Empire till 1917, First World War, and then the British took over. We have 1,100 Muslim occupation time, and there's no mentioning of a nation, a Palestinian culture, any Palestinian civilization, kings, prophets, writers. Let's research what we will find. They all called the land Palestine. Well, it became clear that this place is called Palestina, and it belongs to the Jews. This is the mix that froze to a situation that was clear to everybody. This is the Jewish nation, and it's called Palestina. When my father was in a Nazi in Germany, they said, the Jew, go to Palestina. Journalist came, I did that. Now do you want me to get out of Palestina? Even the Jews called the area Palestina. Here, look. This is, I took a picture in the Museum of Bet Hadassah. It's a hospital, Chesed Avraham, Palestini, Jewish in Hebron. They wanted to give Arafat the credit. No. Look at this big. It says Chesed Avraham, Palestine Hospital. It's a letter that they sent to get donations. So it was clear. This place is Palestine. It's Palestina. That's how they called this land. There was no problem with this name because there was no other people that wanted this name. This is an idea from the British Mandate. Name of a lady by the name of Sarah Ruppel something, Letty. And it says place of residence, Palestine. Yeah, that's her identity, that's her citizenship. The mandate of Palestine. There was here the League of Nations to create a national home to the Jewish people. And here you see the Jewish agency. What do you call the Jewish agency in Israel? Jewish Agency for Palestine. No problem, no feeling that we're servicing somebody else. Here, tourism, the Jewish agency, the tourist office, the Jewish Agency for Palestine, Jerusalem. Visit Palestine, the land of the Bible. Wonderful. So during the mandate, the Jewish brought tourism to here, and that was the name that they used. And other examples, letters, official letters. Palestine built a Jewish state. So it was common connection. It was clear. It's us. Help him build Palestine. Building. So we're going back to this, guys. That this is Zuhair Muhsen, the head of the organization Al-Saika, 1977, part of the PLO, until conglomerate of terror organization. Al-Saika was one of them, supported by Syria. This was interviewed and very clearly, and he didn't want to, considering the fact that he has no attention to the national. It says the Palestinian nation doesn't exist. The creation of the Palestinian state is a new tool for the war against Israel. In order to unite the Arabs, they created a new tool. It's called the Palestinian nation to fight Israel. In reality, there's no difference between Palestinians, Syrian, Jordanian, Lebanese. It's only for political tactic we're calling on the nation of Palestine, because the national interest of the Arabs is to create an identity, Palestinian identity that is separate, and to create it against Zionism. Tactical, Jordan is a state with can come to Jaffa and Haifa, but I, as a Palestinian, can demand Haifa, Jaffa, Beersheba in Jerusalem. After we get all our rights, he showed the whole tool. All this is tactical. It's all bluff. Why did they invent the Palestinian nation? He said once, it's the changing of proportions. Until the 6-Day War, when they looked at the globe, and they saw that there was a huge Arab from Morocco till India. It's a huge area that's almost like a continent size. That is all Arab, all Muslim. In the middle there's one spot, a different color. It's called Israel, and they write the name on the ocean because there's no space. He comes and they see Goliath of Arabs near a David that is in times pre-6-Day War. They said one Arab that says a letter to, and he says, "New David, let's look at you. With all the nations are coming." And they were fighting, and it was really scary. Let's see, a few days somebody wrote, "Hey, you look, see, we did it." So the moment we are David and the Arabs are Goliath, we are in a situation that we're the underdog. And look at the map. All the green is, we have also Iran, Afghanistan, and Turkey. There's the Muslims. And Israel. What did they do? They invented the Palestinian nation, who is the big, who is the small. This is Palestine, and this is the big one. This is the giant. This is David, and this is Goliath. That changed the whole situation. It's ingenious. When you disconnect this part, they claim it's Palestine from the whole entire ocean of Arabs, and it's just the tip of the little finger of this giant. You see that suddenly we are the giants and they're and it's brilliant. And what said Muhsen, to demand a part of Israel, because from 1948 the borders of the nations was really clear. Jordan was Jordan. It took over an area of Judea and Samaria illegally. There was occupation for all matters, and this occupation was not acknowledged by the nations. But Jordan, as the eastern side of the Jordan, was clear. Syria was clear. Egypt was clear. They couldn't come suddenly after they divided everything and say, "Oh, okay, we want also Israel." It's difficult to work like that in front of the state, to say that. So they went by force, by violence, thought that this situation, this accident that came on 1948 will be solved and fixed in the first occasion. And what happened after the 6-Day War, that they understood. After 6-Day War, they got all the propelling, and they understood that they have to invent somebody new that would say, I'm demanding this. It's the Arab states are not out of it. Everything is good. The Palestinian, I demand. And here you have to do a division. And that's how the whole media came up. Naomi Shemer said about the Palestinian thing that take a camera and do close-up on the head of Goliath after he got the rock on that injury, and see how Goliath is poor and miserable after he got the rock from David. 2 years before, in 1974, the late Syrian president Hafez Assad said, we should remind the Palestinian people, we see Palestine as the southern part of the Arab nations, part of southern Syria. In 1987, Assad said again, Palestine never existed. And then Hussein said, because he wanted to leave the option for South Syria, and Hussein said, the Palestine, we have to create that in order to get against the Zionism. And Arafat, 1970, says, we don't care about the borders. Palestine is just a drop in a big ocean. Our nation is the Arab nation, and we were sleeping. And he says, another interview, it's not Palestine. Whoever that was the head of the Palestinian idea when it was created was in Ahmed Shukeri. We'll see what's the history behind this guy. In 1956, said in the UN, the Arab League, and it says a creature like Palestine is non-existent. It's southern Syria. He was also the first of PLO that was created in 1964. Well, wait a minute, it's before the occupation. What Palestine they want? It was Tel Aviv, because it was an idea of Nasser, the president of Egypt, that made it against Israel and against Jordan. In 64, in the 1st of January, in Intercontinental, in the Olive, they created the organization of PLO in East Jerusalem, and Ahmed Shukeri says that Palestine doesn't exist, became the PLO head. And it's unbelievable from all sides, this concept. Ahmed Shukeri was born in Lebanon. He was his mother is Turkish. In Jordan was a lawyer. In the UN was the representative of Syria, Saudi Arabia, the Arab League. Very multi-talented person. In a combination guy, a dealer, created a fiction of the Palestinian. What's his effort? He says that's enough. He just said so. So they asked Abu Mazen, everything is Palestinian, the history, everything is Palestinian. So everything is for the Palestinian. Avraham Avinu is Palestinian, Moshe Rabbeinu is Palestinian. All the king, the prophets, J-Man is Palestinian, Goliath is Palestinian. David, of course, was Palestinian. What did they do? What was the quarrel between them? Oh, no. As you see the P, as you see the PA, what they call it? They call it Philistine. They can't say the P. They can't say that particular letter. There's no P in Arabic. When you say no barking, no parking, no barking means no parking. There was a no barking. It was in Hebron. There was a wall that they wrote on it, no barking. So the only nation that can't say its own name. They mean the P, as you see, but they put P, not F or B. Occupation from whom? 1948 to 1967, 19 of real occupation, Jordanian. No one else besides England and Pakistan acknowledged that those 19 years took over Judea and Samaria. It was illegal. Only England and Pakistan, as I said, acknowledged it. This is the occupation, but nobody cared. This guy, 1917 to 1948, the British mandate. The reason for it was to create a national home for the Jews in Israel. They had the trustee from the League of Nations, so they didn't say it's ours by the British. We didn't take it over from the British. 1517 to 1917, 400 years of the Ottoman Empire. They were taken out. They never said it was theirs. They were part of the Islamic Empire. In 1923 was the Lausanne Agreement, when they gave up all the empire in there, signed. Besides Turkey itself, they couldn't have a demand. We didn't take it over from the Turkish before. The difference between Second Temple and the Turkish, there were Mamlukim, Crusaders, Persian, Muslims, Byzantine. They're all in a museum. They don't demand. There's no, like, we took it over from them. Who was before them was the Second Temple. This is why in the decision for the mandate in 1922 to reconstitute the Jewish nation, there's no problem that was legal or moral to the League of Nations to connect us together to this land. No one has a demand for it. The proportions, the original proportion, were less than 1/5% from the Arab. There was Dennis Miller. It says, imagine a whole football with 500 million, and in the middle there is a matchbox that's called Israel. And now they say that all the problems of the world is because of the matchbox to give the whole entire soccer stadium half of its size. Until the 6-Day War, the Arabs had something. Until 6-Day War, they said for sure that it was an accident. By accidents, they then, with all this hundreds of millions sitting all over the Middle East, and here comes a nation that is refugees from Europe, a very small part, with a fighting force that is tiny, and they weren't able to get over this. It's an accident, and we'll just take care of them. And they were very clear. They were not sophisticated about they didn't try to kind of maneuver it, or to be careful and attention. The final resolution. The men to the sea and the women to us. And this is the last result, and this is the cartoons that they use. In Arabic, it's in 20th, the Mufti invented the national identity. He's the one that adopted for the first time the idea of Palestinian identity. He was amazing with his abilities to do bad, but he also has the idea of to build the idea, the concept of Palestinians, and also the organization of pogroms and incitement. Not many leaders were like him, and it was fitting. This friend of his, Hitler, he did the 1922, also 36, 39, incitements. He was kicked out, went to Iraq, did the Farhud in Baghdad. When he went to Germany, he sat in Berlin, became a friend of the Nazis, incited them, because they wanted to just get rid of the Jews. They didn't want to destroy the Jews. They had a plan from Madagascar and other places just to get rid of them. He was the one who pushed towards annihilation. If he wasn't there, maybe they wouldn't have gotten to it, but he was the one who pushed to do that, and he created an agreement that when they get to Israel, that he will destroy the Jews, and then his nation will get the control inside the Nazi empire. And he created 2 SS divisions in Bosnia, Palestinian divisions, and they started to come with their forces of Rommel to Tunis, and there were like already refugee camps there and concentration camps, and he had he's building in Dotan field a concentration camp, and it didn't work out, thank God. In the 20s, the Mufti invented the steps from another point. In 1947, there was a division plan, a Jewish state and an Arab, and this is the map. As you see, the blue is Israel, and the brown is a state that was called an Arab state. They didn't use the Palestinian concept in 47. In 59, they had the PLO, to release, and in 64 they had first Fatah and then Ashraf PLO. 59, Ashraf was the PLO, was the main, and then 67 they received their shock of their life. In 1974, they re-evaluated everything. I said the no in 68, all the Arab nations. I said no to negotiation, no recognition, and no peace. No, the famous no's. How do you do something against Israel? In 74, they had another issue that I said the step plan. We first have to take this big cake we have by pieces. We'll eat it by pieces. Then they start in the idea, the concept, the demand to say Judea and Samaria first. Let's start to peel it slowly. And this is something that Arafat says. The Oslo Accords is a base for the independent Palestinian. According to the National Palestinian in 1974, he had to make a reasoning in front of the Arabs. How can we acknowledge? He says it's a piece. It's according to the idea of 1974 national decision. So he says everything is good. We're working according to the plan. I'm not diverting. I'm not becoming a peacemonger. In 1974, we're gonna use every part of Palestine. Israel will get out and will be released, and that was 12 days before signing. So in 2010, the Middle East, until the Arab Spring, the people that are called Palestinian, they have a big problem. Until 2010, the beginning of 2011, this is what the Middle East looked like. Egypt, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, state nation, they're clear. It doesn't matter that the standards were not like ours, but they were still functioning states. This nation states, this track, this national track, that what created were the European countries that won during the World War II and got mandates to have a nation like that. England got Egypt, they got mandate on Palestine, Jordan, Israel. French got Syria and Lebanon. In Iraq was again British. Today, this nation's crashed. Where we have this war is between groups, ethnic groups and tribes, which is the real division of the Muslims there, which is more authentic. The states were like a dictatorship that were kept by the legal, like Assad in Syria, that took over all this area, and he's the Alawin, which is only 10% of Syria. It's an ethnic group, and the Alawi, this Alawi held 90% of other ethnic groups, Druze, Kurds, against this Syrian majority. In Iraq you have Shiites, Kurds, Syrian. The division, the real division is different. And now this is thanks to the best president, Barack Obama. That was great. He destroyed all our he created, there was no other president that helped us so much to divide all the other nations. He didn't mean to, but he did a really good job of destroying this countries. Everything is going on flame, and you have Shiites, Maronic, Christians, Druze, Sunni, the Syrians, all these different groups. The Iraqi people, the Sunni, Shia, Kurds, Yazidi, Turkmenim, Christians. They mostly dead or ran away or were, dissolved. This is the new divisions of the Middle East, and today, it's every day it changes, but it's a total ethnic war. It's destructive, terrible. All this national model it was crashed. Why is this important for the Palestinian issue? Because it used to be the following of the line of the nation-state countries, and suddenly, if everything is destroyed, it doesn't exist, and you have only ethnic groups. Why are you coming now with this idea of a Palestinian state when everything is crashing and doesn't exist? So the ground was broken. How is it really dividing in Israel, in Palestine? How is it dividing here? There's no tribes. Everybody's almost Sunni. It's enough. It's a religion. It's not a nation. And this is a quote from Abu Mazen explained about a year ago. The pan-Arabism. He sees that everything is crashing the nation-state around, and he understands that he spoke about pan-Arabism. The Oba in Arabic is the problem. The Palestinian problem is to keep the Palestinian issues, to keep united Syria, and Syria was the nation state. If it's going to break, also Palestine will break, and the Palestinian problem will also break. That something got the huge problems around the issue. What they're trying to do here is also was broken down. It's a very important issue, and we have Gaza. We gave it up in we gave it to the PA. Very quickly, Hamas, after a year, did a revolution and took over and took Gaza. He threw all the PA people and created a new situation. Hamas could have a state. We're the state of Palestine, Hamastan, whatever you want to call it. He didn't do that. He didn't declare a state. Because Hamas is the Muslim Brotherhood. Muslim Brotherhood, their ideology is that you can't have a nation state, but an empire, a Muslim empire, Caliphate empire on all the world, on all the Middle East. Like Daesh, like ISIS. The tactic is less extreme. But the same. And they didn't create a state, and they say this nation state is a conspiration of the West to divide the Arabs. So ideologically they're not creating a nation. It's the last thing that differentiates them from Fatah PLO, which is the national group that's in the Arabs. Was something really odd created. It's a paradox of occupation. Abu Mazen is taking his hair out. If there's an example for like he's somebody is Abu Mazen, and today he knows if Israel get out from Judea and Samaria and there's no more occupation, the Hamas about a month takes him out as they did in Gaza. It's clear to him. This is why he's not doing any elections at the end, because there used to be in 2006 he lost elections. There's no elections because he knows the Hamas will take. If Hamas will take it, he doesn't want a nation state there, so he has to hold us and hug us like twice. He's doing it in a complex way. There's a cooperation so the Hamas terrorists will not kill him, and he's creating us as a contractor for us security. We are keeping him from Hamas. This is the cooperation, because it's a joke. He's not making us do anything. Israel took over a few groups that wanted to do a revolution, and he has to cooperate with us against his own brother. So he has to have insight in order to get some sort of legitimation for his people. Otherwise they'll say you're like part of the Lebanese forces, like there was Saddam. The Palestinian narrative will die with the occupation. If we get out, there won't be a Palestinian state. There wouldn't be that option. It's a paradox of occupation that is really funny. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna watch. Hopefully it'll work. There is no Palestinian nation. It's a colonial invention. When we were there, any Palestinians? It's a colonial invention. There's a Palestinian. Palestine until the end of the 19th century was South Syria. The Azmi Bashar, the relative of our famous, and he says there's no Palestinian. He's a Christian that claims all the Hamas statements. Of course, Yaron London didn't want to hear that being stated. He wasn't prepared for that. So the minister, internal person, Hamas, if Egypt... Brothers, there are 1.8 million of us. In Egypt there are about 90 million people. We equal merely 2% of the Egyptian population. Supplying us with the fuel. Al-Aqsa and the land of Palestine represent the spearhead for Islam and for the Muslims. Therefore, we seek the help of our Arabs. We are not seeking their help in order to eat, to live, to drink, to dress, to live the life of luxury. No. When we seek their help, it's in order to continue the fight. Allah is praised that every Palestinian throughout Palestine proves his roots, whether it's from Saudi Arabia, Yemen, or anywhere. We have blood ties, so where is your affection and mercy? Personally, half of my fallen is Egyptian. We are like that. 30 families in Gaza Strip are called Al-Masri, Egyptian. Of others, half of the Palestinians are Egyptians, another half is Saudis. Who are the Palestinians? Many families called Al-Masri, and the roots are Egyptian. They are from Alexandria, Cairo, Daminta, north, the Upper Egypt. Egyptians, we're Arabs, we're Muslims. We're a part of you. veGaon, it's always on the internet, we see it. This is why the conclusion from this is very simple. If your identity gives you a demand, if there's a Palestinian identity, there was the Palestine somewhere, and it depends on us, and it's our fault. You have to make sure not to get to this. Israel fell thanks to two people, Menachem Begin and Aaron Barak in Camp David. The first time that a leader in the code words, the legitimate was Begin in Camp David. Give Sinai was the tail of the problem. Begin did in Camp David. The catastrophe was signing this particular sentence. Afterwards, when Rabin came, well, I'm continuing Begin's work. Everything was led already, and whoever says that is this particular. How do you explain Begin? He didn't understand. Aaron Barak understood it, and he connected this. We want a solution, one of a two-state solution, and when it is going to be found, even Ahmadinejad in this area says that he supports the Palestinian state. Nobody is laughing on anybody. With the solution of a two states, Israel will be destroyed. Because if they're coming out of Jerusalem, what will be the promised land and the promised nation? Where will be all what they gave in order to get out? They see Jerusalem as their spiritual center. They see Judea and Samaria as the historical dream. If the Jews get out of all these places, the Zionist dream will be destroyed from itself and will go forward. He understood it all the way. This is the ambassador to Lebanon of PLO, and you understand? That's not... all this is important, security issues, but the philosophical idea, if we give up the heart of our identity, our nation will not survive. And at the end, we give the credit to Tzafri Ronen, late Tzafri Ronen, Kibbutznik, that lit this issue to this hypnotical situation about the Palestinians. Even though those who didn't want to give up, they used this terminology and didn't understand the danger of cooperation with this narrative, how it destroys it. Tzafri Ronen, it's a memorial of 8 years to his death. He was 53 years old when he died, and in the last few years he took this idea and he put his soul into it. He paid for that with his health. cause sadness. Tuesday, 27th is, yeah, they're gonna do some sort of a memorial for him. So, friends, thank you to Boaz.